Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about extraction. Extraction is a big, scary word, but I'm going to try to make it very simple. And actually, it is simple in concept. It's all it is just dissolving part of the bean into the water, and there you have coffee. That's all it is. So extraction. Now, we need to pull a certain amount of the bean out, and according to professionals, it's between 18 and 22%. But we don't need to know that. All we need to know is if we don't pull enough, it's going to taste grassy, sour, and just kind of disappointing. Even if you really don't pull enough, it's going to be really watery and bland, So, okay, so if you don't pull enough, that's what you're looking at. If you pull too much, that's where you start to get like the really bitter, really harsh, like ugh, you don't want to drink that. And there are reports out there that that's actually bad for you because you're pulling parts of the bean that are unhealthy. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know that for sure, but you might want to look more into that if you like. But what we're looking for is a target range. We're looking for characteristic flavors. So this is when you take a look at the bag of beans and you see on there it says like, let's say blueberry or dark cherry or hazelnut or whatever. You're looking for those characteristics. If you miss it on the sour end, you haven't taken enough of the bean. If you miss it on the bitter end, you've taken too much and you want to make some adjustments. There's a few variables. I would say there's 4 main variables that we have to work with. There's grind size, that's one. That's the particle size, of the bean that after you grind it. There's water temperature. There is agitation, which is the amount of movement of the coffee, and there's time. Okay, I would say the biggest variable that I change, the most common variable I change is grind size. Okay, so think about this. You have a piece of candy. Okay, you put it in your mouth. If you want to extract it faster, what do? You bite on it, you make it into smaller pieces, and then it'll extract faster. So we're going to do the same thing with coffee beans. If let's say if you get that grassy, watery taste, okay, then you want to make the pieces smaller so you have a greater amount of surface area being exposed to the hot water. That's going to increase extraction. It's going to pull more of that bean out and get you closer to that 18 to 22% range. Okay, so in this case, let's say it's pretty grassy, but I feel like there's character just on the horizon. It's almost there. I might do make a 2 or 3 click adjustment and see how it goes from there. So you're always trying to get to that process. Okay, so if I over extract, I'm going to get that bitter flavor. So what do I want to do? I want to make the pieces larger and keep all the other variables the same. Same water temperature, same amount of agitation, same amount of time. That's ideally what I want to do. Now, some of the time might change, but anyway, I would start with grind size. Now, I would say since we talked about roast levels, let's just kind of reiterate on that a little bit. So for the dark roast, you generally want larger particles. Why is that? Because dark roast kind of increases in size during the duration of the roast. So it increases in size, it becomes more soluble or more easy to extract like that. So if we do a larger piece, it's going to slow down that extraction rate. It's not going to just over extract so quickly. Okay, so generally darker roast, larger particle size. The coffee world is going to kill me if they ever see this, but anyway, just in general, this is a very white belt kind of approach, a very baseline approach. If you're doing something on the lighter roast end where you have a really hard, really dense bean, it's more difficult to pull the coffee out of that bean and into the water, just do a smaller particle size, okay? All right, so that's it for that. For water temperature, all right? I almost always keep right around 100 degrees. Probably drops a little bit below that by the time I actually get around to doing my pour over or whatever. So, but very close to the boiling point. And the only time I would ever change this is if I was doing a dark roast, which I almost never do. But remember, dark roast is very easy to extract. So if I already have a large particle size and it still tastes really bitter, the next thing I can do is lower the water temperature a little bit. I might just do 5 degrees Celsius, maybe as much as 10 degrees Celsius, and see what the effect is. Maybe that would smooth it out a little bit. One thing I want you to keep in mind is if you're doing a dark roast, which is basically going to be anything from a grocery store or a large chain, probably it's not going to have much character. It's had most of that character roasted out of it, because you've got beans coming from all different places, all different characters, and they basically just roast away all the different characters of those beans so that they taste the same. So if you're really looking for character, you're probably not going to find it on one of those dark roast beans. So just kind of keep that in mind. But so I would almost keep the water temperature always the same if you're working with medium to light roast. Okay, next thing is agitation, and you get a lot of the agitation from the different brew methods. So for example, if I'm doing a light roast, again, hard to extract, right? So I do small particle size. If I have a small particle size, but I also have a small opening in my brewer, then it's going to clog up. It's going to take way too long for that to get through. It'll over extract. It'll taste bitter. It'll be horrible. Okay, but the V60 does have a large opening in the bottom. So even if I do a small grind size and I do a pour over, okay, that's going to allow the water to pass through at a very appropriate rate. Now also keep in mind that with this brewer, I'm going to almost constantly be doing some sort of agitation, like a pour over. So I'm introducing like hot water constantly and keeping the movement going, and it's hot water and it's a fine grind, and so this is really good for light roasts. This brewer really lends itself to a lot of agitation, a lot of movement. Okay, this on the other hand, actually this is my go-to for medium roasts. The reason is because it doesn't have a lot of agitation involved. I put the hot water in, I put the coffee on top, I stir a little bit and let it sit there. And then after however much time I want to let it brew, I just put it on top of a cup and it just drains straight through. So there is some agitation just in the draining process, but not much, especially during the actual brew process. There's really no agitation. So I also do not a V60, French press from time to time. And I basically use the same method where I put the water in first, put the coffee on top, stir it in, and let it sit. Okay. If I'm doing on the darker roast side, then I would use less time. If I'm doing on the lighter roast side, which I really wouldn't, because without the agitation, you really miss a lot of the character and a lot of the kind of the really bold flavors of a light roast. But anyway, if I was going to do a light roast in a French press, I would do more time to give it more time to extract. So that's the variables that we're dealing with. Remember, we've got grind size, okay? If it's too sour, make the grind size smaller. If it's too bitter, make the grind size bigger. There you go, okay? Hot water, okay? Almost always keep it at 100 Celsius, 212 Fahrenheit. If you have a large particle size and it's still bitter, then you can decrease the water temperature. Actually, we'll do a video on cold brew soon. That's a totally different story though. Agitation, a lot of it depends on the brew method and the recipe that you have. So lots of agitation. Light roast needs that. Dark roast, you usually don't want agitation. French press, clever brewer, those work really well for low agitation coffees. Time, again, so time generally is the last element. It's almost like an afterthought. It's like if the brew went really quickly, that could be an indication that you need to change the grind size, make it smaller so it takes more time for the brew to pass through something like this, right? So time is kind of like an post hoc indicator, something like that. But really the flavor is what it comes down to. So you taste the coffee, and if you really feel like you got the character, great. It doesn't matter how long it took to get there. It doesn't matter, like if you got all the variables and you know what you did and you got there, you can repeat that day after day after day, right? So then you just keep your your grind size the same. You know, you're already at the baseline 100-degree water temperature. You have, like, let's say a method that you do, like you're constantly pouring over, or maybe you just do a center pour and it's just going at the same rate all the time. Whatever you did, just kind of keep it like that, and that'll you know, that's the right extraction for that bean. So that's what it all comes down to. Every bean's different, but you're trying to capture that character of the bean. Now, one last thing I'll say about this. If you imagine you've got a farm, okay, they grow the bean, they do a really good job growing it, and then they process it really well, they export it, and they try to retain the right amount of moisture content and all that. The importer gets it and distributes it, and the what do you call it, the coffee shop, they get it, they roast just right to capture the character of that bean, and it makes it to your table. You know, it's your responsibility to honor all those people and all that huge, long, amazing process by finding the character of that bean and really appreciating it. You know, it's an amazing process. So, and then also it's just kind of a lot of fun. So next video we'll talk about elevation, and after that we're gonna get into brewing. I'm gonna do a brew with a new bag of beans, and then we're gonna do a follow-up brew where I try to dial it in and make some adjustments from where I was. So all this, I think, will make a little bit more sense in that case. So, all right, that's it for this video. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll catch you next time. Jaggy? Yep.